Welcome back to another edition of Queer Prophets Podcast. I'm your host, Diane Conklin, and I am excited to be here today. Just a reminder before we get started of the three pillars that we always try to encompass with anything that we do with Queer Prophets, which is inclusion, community, and growth. And I have a feeling that with today's guest, we're going to have maybe a little bit of all three of those things. So without further ado, let me welcome. I am honored as always to have anybody who comes on. Is always an honor for anyone to share their time with me and to share their time with you guys who are listening and watching and getting the information from them. So welcome, Robert Jerome. I'm happy that you're here, and I'm excited to talk to you about what you're doing and how things are going for you. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you for having me, Diane. My name is Robert Jerome Pagan. Let's see. People call me an activist, an artist, a pot stirrer, a little bit of everything. I focus in the art world. I grew up in theater. I've done theater since I was 6. And currently I'm working in the film and television realm of the arts and entertainment industry, but I also run a nonprofit theater as well. So yeah, I'm a little bit everywhere, and my hands are kind of in all the pots, but I would say I'm an artist activist is probably the easiest way to sum it up.
Great. And so do you predominantly deal in your theater and your activist work with LGBT issues, or are there other things that you're also involved in?
So, a little bit, I guess, even more about myself. I identify as a gay man. I've been married to my husband for almost 13 years. It'll be 13 years October. We got married when we were 19 and 21. We were just little babies. And so my life is, I guess, in the LGBTQ realm of things. So that just happens to be a part of my reflection in work. Growing up Puerto Rican, Mexican, and French, I had that inner twine of a bunch of different cultures as well. And so, like, for me, telling your story, no matter who you are, is important. And so when I look at my theater company or our film company, and our film company is actually 90% gay owned, actually a little bit over that. I think it's almost, yeah, it's close to 95% gay owned. And so, like, everything I do is from the community around me, and I just happen to have a lot of multicultural and LGBTQ people around me, and that is what one of my pillars of growth is making sure that I am working so that the people in my community also grow as well. So, like, for example, we have a television show. Our editing team is all women of color. So, like, and so we may have an all directing a male directing staff, but we have an all women of color editing staff. So I try to balance things as much as possible. My ideology is the more people of color or the more diverse or oppressed people in the room, the more you're able to reach an entire community with a balanced ideology. Because my editors see something different than I do, and that's because they've grown up different. They've had different experiences. Obviously, they're women, so I don't know what the experience of being a colored woman is, and so, like, that kind of all helps push us into being a very collaborative force with the ideology that people's stories truly matter. And that goes into our theater company and into our film company. And in the theater company, we tend to kind of look at more kids and how they can grow. And actually, last week I got an email, a message from one of my ex students who is now going to be a PhD. They're going into a PhD program, and their big thing was that if they hadn't been in the theater program with my husband and I, they wouldn't have had a place to explore who they were and what their comfort level is in life and what their true self is. And so now they're going to a doctorate program to help other individuals discover who they are. And so, like, that, they're not doing theater, but what we did with them as a kid built a foundation of openness and self-respect that gave them the ability to be who their true self is. And that to me is probably the most rewarding of the things that I've done in my years of being a professional in the theater world and in the entertainment world. Is realistically every show, every interaction is a chance to support people in being who they truly are.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. I love, you know, as I've gotten older, legacy has become something that's important to me. And this piece of, I often say, as a matter of fact, I have a little sticky on my, on the hutch of my desk. And actually one of my clients quilted me a pillow that says, making a living while making a difference. And, it probably should be the other way around, right? Making a difference while making a living. But this piece of, the effect that you have, I call it the ripple effect of, you affect one and they affect 10, which affects 100, which affects 1,000, which affects, whatever. But this piece of, and I actually have an acronym for ripple, which is repetition in place produces little effects somewhere. But it's that piece of knowing, like, deep down in this place in your soul, not in your heart, not in your mind, but in your soul, that you actually made a difference in somebody else's life, right? And so what? They're not following in the theater stuff, but they've gone on to do something because of your influence. And to me, I think that's just the ultimate reason. I mean, look, I want to make money too. Don't get me wrong. I'm a capitalist at heart, but that ultimate reason for being in business, the ultimate reason, you know what? Beyond that, it's the ultimate reason for being alive to me, right? Is the effect that you can have on somebody else's life.
I agree, and I always, the funny thing is I grew up in the East Bay of California, so like Hayward, Castro Valley, Pleasant. I know you're on the East Coast, uh, Oakland, and like for me, growing up, there was always so much of that diversity around me, so much of those things. But I also was very religious growing up. I was a Catholic. I call myself a recovering Catholic now, but I was a Catholic then. And one of my things is I always felt that theater and art was my calling. It was the thing that I was put on this planet, either God or Mother Earth or whoever you believe in, whichever higher power or no higher power at all. Uh, it was the reason why I was here, is to create and to tell stories. And like I used to tell myself that in high school, and I think I used to tell myself that just to make myself feel better. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go into art, guys. But as I got older and I began to start my own theater companies or work with professional theaters and work on film, I really realized that that kid was saying something that this adult would feel. And I really do believe that people have a route and a calling, and this I feel is my calling, to share not only my stories but other people's stories, and help people understand. Like I'm highly dyslexic, so like when I was growing up, it was hard to learn how to read, but theater helped me learn how to read. It helped me engage, and it helped me learn how to flip those letters, and it helped me learn how to know that the written word is important to be able to express yourself. And as people of color, as someone of color, one of the hardest things I feel is being heard. So in order to be heard, you have to understand how to write, speak, read, do all those things, and do them to a level that your counterparts won't look down at you upon. So like, well, I found, like, when I was in college, I always had this extra thing. It's like I'm a brown actor in a world where a lot of plays are for not people of color, or a lot of musicals are not for people of color. So luckily, I could do a little passing, and I was able to do that. But then at the same time, I realized that people were more concerned about what my writing or what my grammatical errors were than what my message was. And so like it's just so much of just that stuff that you have to battle when you're when you're trying to be yourself. I feel a lot of us, and the LGBT community is, I love us, but we happen to be the worst at this. We talk about diversity and we talk about loving everyone, but we are the first person to go, oh my God, that guy's so fat. Oh my
Oh my
God.
gosh. Amen. This is one of my pet peeves. Yep. Let's go here.
And so like I also call it bully syndrome, because it's just like when you're bullied in high school, then you tend, or in elementary school, you tend to bully others because you think that that's what it is. And us as a community has been bullied so much that we go, okay, well, who's the one that we can bully so that we feel a little higher, instead of doing the, wait a minute, let's help lift each other. I may not completely agree with every ideology that you say, but you're a part of my community. And before I throw that stone, maybe I should look at the other people who are throwing stones at both of us.
Right.
And so I think that that's something that we as an LGBT community does not do very well. And then even further, we as like me as an LGBT person of color, we even there's a lot, most trans humans are killed by people of color. And like, how can you, as someone who has been so oppressed or has a history of being enslaved, then turn around and commit these atrocities against people who are a part of your community? It just baffles me.
Yep, me
And
too.
so I think, like, for me, like, one of the most important things is, I may not understand it, but their heart is human and they are like us, and it's my duty to try to understand it. And if I can't, at least respect it and understand that
Yep.
everyone has the right and everyone has the choice. And this is where people say I'm a little crazy. It is okay to be homophobic. It is not okay to act on your homophobia. If you want to be homophobic behind your closed doors, that's fine. Like they used to say in Texas, if you want to have gay sex behind your closed doors, that's fine. Just don't do it on the street. If you want to be homophobic, just do it behind your closed doors. If you want to be racist, just do it behind your closed doors. Know that when we step outside our path, our given right from God or whoever you believe your creator is compassion. And if we don't give compassion, you're not going to receive it. And that it kind of goes to that golden rule: do unto others as you wish done unto yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and we hear it in kindergarten, but no one ever really like understands it. And so I think that's something that I don't know. I went on a tangent. We
No,
went there.
no, you are preaching the choir. You are talking my language, my friend.
But I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting to me, my whole thing is we can disagree, but what if instead of yelling back and forth in this disagreement, we actually listened to each other? And I said, you know what, Robert, that's not how I think right now. So explain to me how you got to that process. Explain to me why you think that's okay. And then actually listening instead of sitting here formulating my own argument about what you're saying, right? I mean, you said before we came on, you're a child of the social media thing, and I often laugh in social media at these people who are literally like killing each other, screaming and yelling. You can almost see them like smashing each other with baseball bats. No one ever changed their opinion on social media. Why are you going to all that? But I love the fact that you said what I've said for a long time, and it is not always popular in our community, but we want to be loved and accepted, and yet we are the first to judge. We don't have that same love and acceptance for one another. And it's funny because I often talk about, when you walk into any networking thing that's a queer community thing, right? What do you see? All the gay men are over here, all the lesbians are over here, all the trans people are over here, all the Black people. And I'm always like, and that's why part of the pillars is inclusion. I'm very serious about, and that's why the name of this is Queer Prophets. I use the word queer knowing that, look, I'm in my late 50s. That word, when I first said it, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up because it's uncomfortable, right? But it's all inclusive. even LGBTQ plus is not all inclusive, right? People who are non-binary, people who are, there's so many other things about our community. And the thing that I wanted this to be was inclusive. And that's why I chose to use the term, the term queer. But so Jerome, let's talk, Robert, I'm sorry. How do we get, because you're younger, right? So this is a great conversation that I want to have with you, because you have a different perspective and certainly a different coming out story. And with your diverse background of all of these pieces, parts that make you up, how do we get to a point in our community? Let's forget about the world at large, right? Let's talk about the queer community. How do we get to a point in the queer community where there is more inclusion, where the gay men understand that just because I'm a lesbian doesn't mean that I hate you. Matter of fact, I can love you. I can love your body. I can appreciate, the physique. I can do all of that. It just means that there's not a connection from the perspective of who I want to spend my life with, right? So how do we get to the point where we can all stand in one big circle?
So there's okay. This will take a while, but I grew up. I had a gay uncle. So and in the '90s and early thousands, the ideology of lesbian and gay men don't they're not friends was huge. It still is today. I have a lot of lesbian friends, and I think it's funny when we're out there and people are like, "Oh, you guys get along." I'm like, "Yes, we're humans, guys." Um, but I think the biggest thing this is a two-pronged approach, because we have the issue of elitism, LGBTQ elitism inside our community, and one of the biggest things is, and people always go, "Oh, Robert, don't say this," but it's the truth. It Until recently, our community has been controlled by white gay men
Yep.
and white lesbian women.
Yep.
And no matter no matter if you are oppressed or in a minority inside your sexuality, you can hide that. And because of that, I think a lot of our community, it's not that we hate each other or that we don't want to get along with each other. It's that we're jealous that the other can be so proud and allowed.
Mm.
And it's not that gay men don't like lesbians. It's they're jealous that lesbians get to ride topless on their motorcycles. They want to, like, it's a bunch of like, we wish we could do that, and we look at each other and we're like, oh well, they're so free, without understanding that no, we are still not free enough. And if we held each other's hands and I rode my rainbow bicycle with my little wig and you rode topless down the road, maybe it would be more than just a parade. Like if we start accepting those things, because I feel like we're really happy community in June. Like when Pride Month's around, we're like, oh wow, we love everyone and we'll support everything. And then August rolls around, and after everyone recovers from their hangovers, August rolls around and we're like, oh no, we're back into our little boxes. This is the gay men's chorus. Or for example, I think it was Ohio or North Carolina, that gay campsite that will not allow transgendered men to attend their campsite. Like those things don't make sense to me. Like, we are supposed to hold each other up. We are supposed to do those things, and how we do them is by ignoring, and this is crazy, ignoring what people have done in our past and accepting that yes, everyone before us has made a sacrifice and a journey. And I have a lot of older gay men friends and gay male friends in their 60s and even 70s, and they're gonna go, Robert, because they do that. Oh well, you're riding off my back, and during the Harvey Milk riots, and during and I'm always like, yes, I get it, but really things haven't changed that much. We're just semi more accepted, and it's not white gay people on TV all the time now. It's just more gay people on TV. It's different, and I think that until we completely break down the ideology of people being different and accept that, yes, we're different, but we're the same at the same time. I think that until we do that, nothing's going to change. And also, until gay men stop being so arrogant and stop thinking that they've changed the world with one sign, I think that it's gonna take time. And I don't mean to disparage all the activists who came before me, because like without that, there would not be here today.
Sure.
But sometimes it's like Walt Disney didn't stop at Mickey Mouse.
Right.
Like, he moved on and built theme parks. Well, we've kind of gotten complacent in the fact of, oh, well, we have our Pride Parade, and we have a district here in this town, and we have a district here in this town, and but we're not realizing that we're being the segregationist that we said we didn't want to be.
And
And we
I think sorry, but I think the other piece of that is that the arrogance of thinking that everyone has access to the district in that town. Look, I grew up on a 75-acre farm in rural Ohio. I live in Metro Atlanta now. Well, worlds apart, right? So my thing always is, that's great for you when you live in San Francisco, or you live in, Miami, or you live in Atlanta, or wherever, or LA, or pick it, Denver, whatever. But if you're a small town, you're in a small town or in a rural area, those things don't apply, right? This piece of, like, you have no resources, you feel like you're the only one. And so how do we also, like, reach out to that community and say, look, we acknowledge the fact that here in Atlanta it's pretty open and pretty gay friendly, and all of that, and that we still have these challenges to overcome in the suburbs and the rural areas out in the country, and those kinds of things. So we forget, I think, that not everybody lives in the big city where we might be.
Yeah, and so for me, like, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, but now I live in the Central Valley, which is very much called Reagan country in California. So like, I live in the most Republican area of California. I mean, people have tried to get me. People have called me Antifa for just coming out for Black Lives Matter. Wow. So like I live in probably the most conservative area of California now. That's why programs like mine are so important, because this is where programs like this need to happen, are in the suburbs and are in the country and are in the agricultural area of your states. But like, for example, in Fresno right now, there is a huge battle going on. We have a gay artsy district in Fresno called the Tower. Well, an evangelical anti-homosexual church has come in and bought the theater, the actual big old community theater and Tower Theater. They bought it without telling anyone, to basically destroy that community and bring their hatred into that community. So there's this big, huge campaign trying to get it purchased by some gay friendly, some accepting people. I think Sarah Silverman is even on this stuff right now. But it's gotten to the point where if we don't protect our communities and we don't let them grow, we are going to be shoved back into that closet. 4 years of, and I was a Republican for a majority of my life. 4 years of Trump has definitely changed the way things are. Worse than they were in the 90s when it comes to race and homophobia. And I always look at some of these younger kids and I go, wow, you guys were able to go to school in an age where, like, you could take your girlfriend to the prom if or you could take your boyfriend to the prom. When I was in high school, I had a battle against the school administration because they put on the books that only opposite sex couples could go to prom, or could go to any dances, or go to those things. So like, now these younger generations have that, but because we feel free in that way, we are not watching our backs as these big corporations or these mega churches or these, I call them mega hate groups, come rolling in underneath us. And so yes, I do believe that we need to expand, but I also think that social media, and I hate social media so much, but it does help with that expansion.
Yeah.
Um, Companies like Reverie, who do gay television and all that stuff for free, like there's more access today than there was when I was younger, and I think that what we need to do is invest in that access. We need to understand that PFLAG can no longer just be a building. PFLAG has to be a social network
Right.
that builds and helps.
Movement.
Yes, Lambda can no longer just be that legal help aid that you call. It needs to be a movement. It needs to be there. These things need to be accessible to everyone in a more universal way, I believe.
Yeah. Wow, that's a great point. That's a great point. Let's shift gears for a minute because I'm always interested in people who, um, especially really anybody, but especially in our community. So you work with your husband.
Yeah, yeah.
So that creates a whole different dynamic, right? Because you work together, you live together, you are together. It's a 24/7 kind of thing. Talk about some of the pluses and minuses and pros and cons of that, maybe even some of the challenges that you see.
Well, so I love my husband. His name is Giovanni. Luckily, he also works for the school district, so he gets some time away from me. We come from a family of educators and doctors, so we're the weird artist people. But he does the education thing as well. So one of my things is I when we first got married when I was 21. One of the things that I made the decision and we made the decision of was that in order to be the best we could possibly be, we would support each other and no matter what we did. He was not a theater person. He was not a film person. He was not an actor. At that point in time, he was in school for international business, and he speaks Russian and French and Spanish and English. Um, and his love for me allowed him to build a love for theater and build a love for entertainment, because being an actor and being a director, you travel a lot, and I never wanted that awayness, I guess. I never wanted that oh well, I'm going to go away for 3 months and I'll live in Boston while you're just hanging out in California. Like that was never something that I ever wanted. So we really made that decision of whoever makes it first or whatever we do, we're going to support that and we're going to invest in that. So that was the first thing, and we were young when we made that decision. When I turned 25 and we were still going with that, I knew that that it was the right way of living life. It is really hard. It is hard to work 24/7 on something that you care about so much with someone you care about so much. And I will say it's probably harder for him because I'm very stubborn. Um, and then to have a small disagreement on a font color or, or like, and it's always the smallest ones. It's never like the big decisions. It's always like, I worked for 14 hours on this poster. What do you think? I don't like the font. It's always it's always the small ones. But because we work together, we've established really good communication. And which is crazy, people don't realize this. Communication is like key in any relationship, no matter physical, romantic, business, it just matters. And so, because me and him have been able to find each other's languages and go through that, it kind of really is, it's easier than most people think, because it's rewarding, because we don't have kids and we don't have the biological ability of having kids. So I always say my art is our children. And so I'm making art with the person that I would want to make kids with every day. So that makes me happy.
Oh, that's sweet. That's very sweet. And it's interesting that you said that about the communication piece, because I think you're right. And I think it boils down to everything that we've talked about, right? So far in this conversation is really about communication within your relationship, whether it's business or your love relationship, communication inside of our communities, inside of our little niches and subcultures inside of that, and even as a whole, the communication that we have with the world as a whole, and how we express that and how we do that. And I think that's really sort of the key to everything that we talked about, and that people don't do enough of, is that piece of communication and talking, and continue to leave those lines open. Because let's face it, we all want to be right. And when we all want to be right, our egos get in the way, and then we stop communicating, because after all, now you're infringing on my ability to be right if we disagree.
Yeah. And I think for me that I don't want to float my own boat, but I'm going to right here. One of the things that is always told to me as a creator and as a writer, as a director, I have this ability to look at my own work and go, oh, this isn't working. And it always amazes people that I can do that. But I think that's because one of the things that I've learned is I've surrounded myself with intelligent, smart, capable, talented human beings, and I have to listen to them. It's like it's that paradox of a leader is a leader and they make the decisions, but a good leader listens to the advisors around him or around them. And so that's, I think, the key thing is listening to the people you trust around you that are your advisors. And knowing that more than likely they're telling you something because they see something you don't. And so, like, for example, on this television, Forsaken Olive Media is our film production company that we started. The leads we're from 1, 2, 3, 4 different generations. 3 of us are Latinx. Like we really look at everything. Like my creative partner is 13 years younger than I am. So they see something different than the way I see it. And so when we work together, that collaboration builds something that is transgenerational. And that to me is very important. And our DP, him and his husband, they've been married 30 years. So their perspective on our community and what we do is a little bit different than what my perspective is, only being married 13 years and a little bit younger. So like, I think that those things are also very important too. And it is easy to say you're listening, but it is hard to actually open those ears. And that is something that 2020, I think, has helped with, because all this Zoom stuff, we can't talk over each other anymore. We're not in boardrooms or in offices going, blah, 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 blah. Okay, guys, just calm down.
Right.
Now, when we do that, all our screens freak out and our sound goes crazy, and then everyone goes, okay, you can talk. So in a way, the fact that we slowed down, and I was just talking to my creative partner about this yesterday, people's attention spans are getting longer again. For a while, they were getting really short. But because of 2020, everyone's watching long form television. Everyone's in these, like, let me read a book. And so like now our attention spans are starting to grow back. And when your attention spans are longer, you're more capable of listening and having that communication.
That's a great point. Robert, tell me either the best business advice you've ever gotten, or the best, the business advice that you want to leave people with today.
So I guess the best business advice I ever gotten was don't go into art, and then I ignored it. But for me, I would say, as long as you follow your calling, your desire, and you go into it with the understanding that if I love this, it will work, then you're fine. Businesses that have truth and honesty behind their mission and behind their vision and behind their values as a company, and that's something that I realized that a lot of companies don't do anymore. Vision, mission, values, because everything's so, they kind of forget to break it down. And it really is important. Those V's, vision and values, form your mission. And so as long as you are secure in your values and your vision, your mission will always be worth doing.
I love that. So is your calling the same as your passion?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. And I think that, like, some people, like me, I'm lucky. My passion and my calling are the same thing. But some people, their passion is red wine, but their calling is numbers. Like, so how do we make that? Well, we start a winery. Like, like you always have to, you can develop your passions and your calling into something that will work together. But always try to find your calling inside what you're doing. So like, I have a friend who is a waitress or a waiter in New York, and he is one of the singing waiters at one of the Broadway places. Of course, his passion is he wants to be a performer, but he needs to pay the bills too. So I'm going to be a waiter, but wait, I'm going to be a waiter at a singing restaurant. I'm going to share my passion, do my calling, as well as get some money to, and that works for him. And the cool thing is like, he gets seen all the time by producers and people, and they're like, oh, well, come to this audition, come to that audition.
Yeah.
So that kind of hands in hands holds there. But you can find your calling in any job. Like, realistically, like, I've done a lot of things. Like, I haven't just stayed in the art realm. Yes, a majority of my life I've done, like, I was a theatrical director for the Renaissance Fair for 10 years, stuff like that. But I've also worked for the Los Banos Downtown Association. And now I'm working for basically an HOA of rich people and business owners. What's my calling? Oh, I'm doing this to enhance our community, and then I'm going to bring events, which then is also creativity, into the streets, and we're going to do a posada or a rockin' Christmas, or build the community that way. So you can always find your calling in whatever job you have. And if you can't, that's when I say transition is needed.
Yeah. I love that. I often say to people, if you follow your actions, then at some point the passion, shows up. So I love that. So, so we've sort of already talked about this, but what's the thing that you think is sort of the most important immediate thing for our community?
For the queer community, let me see. The first immediate thing is, this is going to be weird, but I think this will work. I think the first immediate thing we need to do is love ourselves. Because we as a community and as individuals sometimes try to heal ourselves by loving others and making others okay. Like, the older gay guy is always to the younger gay guy, it gets better. But who's telling that older gay guy it's getting better?
Right.
Like, so I think that we have to look in ourselves, not only as a person, but as a community. And until our community loves itself, no one's going to love us back.
Wow. It's not weird. It's deep, and it's true. And I love it. Yeah. Wow. That's the heart of the heart, right there. Yeah. Wow. And you're so right. So many times we look outside of ourselves, for the love and for the acceptance and all of that, instead of really going within. And look, the bottom line is, and I said this actually last week on a social media post, sometimes you're in that place where you have to look to somebody else's belief in you so that you can have it in yourself. But I think that's way different than looking outside of ourselves for that love and acceptance, right? It's
way different. Like, my husband's belief in my talent helps and supports me every day. But my love for myself allows that belief to flourish.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I could believe in anyone. Like, I mean, I could believe, for example, my creative partner, I can believe that a 20-year-old has the ability to be studious and understanding and just as capable as a 35-year-old VP. That could be my belief. But until they love themselves enough to actually get that done, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like those beliefs and those love, they won't come together until both those things are hand in
Yeah,
hand. And
there's a wall. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Well, this has been amazing, Robert. Let everybody know if they're interested in the theater or in your film stuff. How do they get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to be able to find more about you?
so, first of all, I'll talk about the theater first. Workshop 44 on Facebook, Instagram. We're doing virtual stuff. We just did a virtual show this past weekend with burlesque at the nighttime and some kids stuff in the afternoon, and so it was a lot of fun. And we have a kids play coming out, a virtual kids play. That means anyone from around the nation and around the world can audition and participate. And we are looking at art, and we're deconstructing Thornton Wilder's Our Town to see what it means to our community and what it means to today. And so Workshop 44 there. Then Forsaken Olive is our media company and our film company. And under that, we are doing an LGBT Latinx indie television show called Last Gasp that takes focus on a Puerto Rican theater artist in the early thousands and their friend group. It's kind of like a sophisticated drug version of Queer as Folk.
Oh, wow.
Like less sex, more drama. So I think that's kind of cool. And you can find us at Forsaken Olive Media on Instagram and on Facebook, or www.forsakenolive.com. And our theater is workshop44.org. But yeah, I mean that's where they can find us and communicate and open dialogue. And we're always looking for playwrights, and we're always looking for people from our community. And so reach out and help us tell your story.
Well, this has been amazing, and I don't say that often, but I love I love dialoguing and talking with people who one have a different perspective and a different background and are a little different age group even, but I love having those deep conversations about just where things are in community and in the world, and I think the wisdom that we can find in other people. And certainly there was a lot of wisdom in you in our short time together. I would potentially love to do another interview with you at some point. Um, but I think, if you've listened to this and you've enjoyed this, I'm just going to encourage you to go back and listen again, because I think there was some real wisdom in the things that Robert brought today, and the things that we talked about, and potentially there's real things there that you can do to provide change, and actionable things, which I think is the important thing, right? We can sit and talk about theory all we want, but if there's no action behind it, nothing changes. So thank you very much for your time, for your amazing insights and energy. And this was just a ton of fun. I was just sitting here while you were talking, thinking, this is why I do this. Like, I love doing this. And getting the chance to meet, some new and great people. I mean, I'm expanding my, my circle every single day. And that's part of what I want to do with Queer Prophets, is provide this community where you guys can interact and can come together and talk and communicate and use each other's services. So, Robert, thank you so much for that. I so appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. I loved it. I love conversation too. So this was awesome.
Great.
And I would love to come back.
Perfect. We'll set that up. So again, this has been today's edition of Queer Prophets. I'm your host, Diane Conklin. And just as a reminder, don't forget, you can always check out the Queer Prophets group on Facebook. Get in there and let's talk business. Let's talk social. Let's talk community. Let's get some things done. There's also the page on Facebook for the Queer Prophets podcast. And you can always go to queerprophets.com, where I do always have the special report there available for you. The 3 keys to growing your business fast, getting more clients, and making more money, because that's all a part of what we do. Again, the 3 pillars, really important. We talked about all of them today, which is always thrills me when we get to talk about all: inclusion, community, and growth. So until next time, make it a great day. Have yourself some fun. Let us know if there's anything we can do. And if you enjoyed this, always, always, always appreciate any positive show comments that you have, or any feedback at all. You know, if you want to see more of things or less of things, or you have an idea about a show, let us know that. So make it a great day. I'm Diane Conklin with Queer Profits Podcast.